Getting tested is the only way to know if you're infected with hepatitis C. That's why the CDC recommends everyone born from 1945 to 1965 get a blood test for hepatitis C. Treatments are available that can cure this disease. So talk to your doctor about getting tested. It could save your life. A message from the CDC.
Broadcasting from the Technology Recycler Studios, this is Indy's Mobile News, 93 WIBC. WIBC HD1 Indianapolis. The news starts now.
Talks with Iran. Jack Callahan, Fox News, about Tehran's nuclear program, as Fox's Lucas Tomlinson reports from the White House.
Iran's foreign minister called the discussions constructive and promising. Oman's top diplomat, who hosted both leaders in Oman, said, quote, "I would like to thank my two colleagues for this engagement, which took place in a friendly atmosphere, conducive to bridging viewpoints and ultimately achieving regional and global peace, security, and stability. We will continue to work together and put further efforts to assist in arriving at this goal." And here was President Trump once again aboard Air Force One talking about what he wants to see from Iran.
I want them not to have a nuclear weapon. I want Iran to be a wonderful, great, happy country.
Iranian officials said after the 2-hour meeting in Oman they'd like to meet again next week.
An immigration judge ruling yesterday that pro-Palestinian activist Mahmoud Khalil can be deported from the U.S., as Fox's Madeline Rivera reports.
An immigration judge overseeing Mahmoud Khalil's immigration hearing in Louisiana on Friday is citing a memo that Secretary of State Marco Rubio submitted this week. Rubio says Khalil's presence in the U.S. would undermine efforts to fight anti-Semitism. Khalil's attorneys, though, are calling the ruling a dangerous precedent, saying he hasn't been charged with a crime, and they're accusing the government of encroaching on his First Amendment rights. Khalil's legal team says he was merely a negotiator for Columbia students who are protesting against the war in Gaza, but Rubio says the administration has the authority to remove Khalil because his actions don't align with U.S. foreign policy.
Khalil's attorneys say they will appeal the ruling. 4 people hospitalized after being rescued from the rubble of the roof collapse at that popular nightclub in the Dominican Republic died overnight. That raises to 225 the number of people killed in the collapse. The nation's health minister says there is a delay in identifying the victims because the majority of them had to be matched using biometric data. America's listening to Fox News.
Stay on top of the latest forecast with America's Weather Team in the palm of your hands.
Here's the latest from America's Weather Center.
It's Fox weather updates throughout your busy day, every day.
That heat's going to be out there for one more day.
Temperatures being 30 degrees above average.
Put the power of over 100 meteorologists and the worldwide resources of Fox in your hands with the Fox Weather Podcast. Precise, personal, powerful. Subscribe and listen now at foxnewspodcasts.com. Connect to Fox News Audio on the Fox News app. Listen to hear your favorite hosts like Brian Kilmeade, Jimmy Fallon, and Guy Benson standing up for what's right, live and via podcast. Just click listen, then swipe right and hear the latest news updates on your time. And scroll down to hear the latest podcasts from Fox News. And it's even easier to listen in the car with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Get programming alerts and notifications. Fox News Audio is on the Fox News app. The voices America trusts. Download it now.
A Russian drone attack.
93 WIBC Mobile News. On the level, on the go.
He says they're playing the long game. I'm Ryan Hedrick, and here's what's trending this hour. You may not be getting true property tax relief now, but you may eventually. Here's Chris Davis.
We still have 2.5 weeks. I'm going to tell you right now. That's a lifetime in this process.
Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith on WIBC's Hammer and Nigel show regarding the version of the property tax bill endorsed by Governor Braun. Beckwith says neither he nor the governor are happy with it because it doesn't provide you true relief.
I understand the frustration. Don't burn the ship to the ground. Anything could happen.
Chris Davis, 93 WIBC Mobile News.
Child exploitation and sexual misconduct are some of the charges that Indiana State Police say a couple from Warren County faces. Richard Lark and Megan Vessels also faced child trafficking charges. They were arrested this week. Teacher absences are planned for some schools Monday. Lots of teachers expected to show up at the State House Monday morning. That's for a rally scheduled to happen from 10 to 1. They're calling it a day of action for the State Teachers Union. Waste can develop in your brain, which may lead to Alzheimer's. John Herrick reports on the work of Purdue researchers.
What clears out out that waste is something called cerebrospinal fluid, also known as CSF.
Ultimately, we know that CSF turns over during sleep.
A.J. Schwichtenberg is a professor at Purdue University. She says if you reach out to her office, they can study your sleep habits to see how well you're doing.
On the level, on the go, and at WIBC.com, now your forecast from the American Standard Cooling Weather Center.
Sunny skies for today, high temperatures in the upper 50s. Tonight, mostly clear, becoming partly cloudy. Can't rule out a stray shower in the early morning. Low temperatures in the low 40s. I'm Wish TV Storm Track 8 meteorologist Ryan Morse for 93 WIBC.
Why? Why take a chance? Why risk a mistake? Why say something? We all have reasons why we choose to ignore the things that give us pause, that seem out of place, that don't feel right. The word why can either paralyze us or empower us to stand up and protect what we love. So if you see something, why do you say something?
I see safe for my family.
I see safe for my friends.
I see say for my students.
We see say for each other.
I see say because all of this matters.
We all have something worth protecting, a why that unifies this community we're all a part of. So protect your everyday. Report suspicious activity to local authorities. If you see something, say something.
For all your home's heating, air conditioning, plumbing, and drain needs, remember the man for all seasons. Chapman. Drain cleanings right now, only $89. Schedule online today at chapmanheating.com. That's chapmanheating.com.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is the Second Amendment, and this is the Gun Guy.
Boom, 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 boom. Bang, 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 bang. Boom, 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 boom. Bang, bang, bang.
With Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Gun Guy Show here on 93 WIBC. Have a full 2-hour show, not preempted by high school basketball, although very cool. As I said last week, I've always been a big fan of listening to IHSAA basketball as well as IU basketball here on 93 WIBC. So we had a little bit of a short show last week, but hey, we've got the full 2 hours this week. Looking forward to this show. The bill that I've been talking about for a while, that is, it was House Bill 1137, that then turned into House Enrolled Act 1137, meaning it had been passed in both the House and the Senate in Indiana, that we had a ceremonial signing for that on Thursday, just a couple days ago. And Governor Braun was really gracious to bring us in. It was the day that the rubber was sort of hitting the road on property taxes, and a lot of attention given to that. And obviously that's a huge issue for virtually everyone in Indiana, either because they are involved in receiving services from local government that is funded to some degree by property taxes, or because they're homeowners and they pay property taxes. And so that was just a huge issue. But even with all that going on, Governor Braun took the time to have a ceremonial signing of House Enrolled Act 1137 in his office, and WIBC was there and recorded some video, took some pictures. The governor had me speak to kind of explain what the bill does. And if you hadn't heard me talk about this, it's something that I've seen as an issue to be addressed for some time here in Indiana. And listen, I don't want to repeat several previous discussions here on the Gun Guy Show of what this does, but one of the big problems, there are two huge problems remaining with our red flag law in Indiana, and House Enrolled Act 1137 fixes one of them. We still have another one to address, and we were trying to get this worked into an amendment to 1137. Looked like it was going to need a separate appropriations because money was involved, so we couldn't address both issues in the same bill. But hey, we're going to be right back in the legislature next session, and get both issues addressed. But the two biggest problems, and people, talk about due process. And listen, in 2019, we dramatically improved the red flag law to make sure there's a timely hearing where you can get in and confront the witnesses against you and have a hearing and put the state to its proof in terms of requiring it to prove by clear and convincing evidence that you're dangerous in order to retain any firearms that have been seized from you, and so as to also restore your gun rights. And we did a lot of good things in 2019. We tightened up the definition of who's quote-unquote dangerous under the red flag law. And listen, a lot of people still criticize the red flag law. I've talked about red flag laws a lot here on the show. Won't repeat that discussion. But two of the major problems that have remained, one is it's a civil proceeding. It's not a criminal proceeding, so nobody goes to jail. However, you can use a constitutional freedom. You go in and someone accuses you of being dangerous under the so-called red flag law, then your guns are seized from you. A judge determines whether there's, quote-unquote, probable cause to believe you're dangerous. That's the first step of, quote-unquote, due process, just like a judge reviews an arrest. I mean, if a police officer sees you breaking the window of a jewelry store and stealing jewelry, can that police officer arrest you on the spot? Yes. Is there any due process given to you whatsoever at that moment that you're put in handcuffs and taken off to jail? No, none. What's the first opportunity you get to have the benefit of due process? It's when a judge reviews your arrest to see whether there was probable cause to believe you're guilty of a crime. If a judge finds probable cause, then often the prosecutor at that point continues with a criminal prosecution. They can keep you in jail depending on the level of crime, or if you're eligible for bond, to bond out, to pay bail, you can get out. But the first step of due process is to require a judge to review the issue of probable cause. Well, that's how the red flag law works too. And that is, if your guns are seized from you, first of all, with a warrant, that means the judge has already found there's probable cause to believe you're dangerous, or guns can be seized by police officers without a warrant, but then they're supposed to submit an affidavit to a judge within 24 hours for the judge to then determine probable cause. So it's similar to how it works in a criminal case. Then, within 14 days in a red flag case, the judge is to file or to schedule a hearing for you to come in and require the state to prove. You don't have the burden of proving you're not dangerous. The state has the burden of proving by clear and convincing evidence that you are dangerous. So putting that burden on the state is another way that over the years we've protected to some degree due process in the red flag. I say we, the General Assembly has protected due process in the red flag context. But there are still a number of other problems, and one of the big ones is that in a criminal case, you can be convicted of several different felonies. And as long as you then have a clean record for 8 years, you can go back, and this is after being convicted of a felony. You can go back and have that expunged off your record. If a criminal case is filed against you and you're found not guilty or the case is dismissed, 1 year after the case is dismissed, you can actually go in and expunge that off your record. That's for a criminal case where a judge found probable cause that you're guilty of a crime, including felonies. 1 year, you can go back and expunge that off your record. For a misdemeanor, even if you're convicted of a misdemeanor, you can maintain 5 years with a clean criminal history. You can go expunge that off your record. And by the way, I handle a lot of expungements. I love doing them. I love restoring people's rights. Yes, if you have a felony conviction, you can have that expunged up. Not all felonies. If someone was hurt, there was serious bodily injury involved, it actually requires the prior written consent of the prosecutor's office. And you have to wait 10 years with a clean criminal history. But for a lot of low-level felonies, and some felonies you can't expunge at all, just period, can't. Sex crimes, you can't expunge. Official misconduct, you can't expunge. So a public official, an elected official takes bribes, they can't expunge that off their record. The sex crimes part, I have no problem with. But for an awful lot of crimes, you can get that expunged off your record. And yes, even for a felony, you get that expunged. For everything except crimes of domestic violence, that restores your gun rights. That's why I do a bunch of them, and I enjoy doing them. It's been fun. I've had people that were prohibited from possessing firearms from 20, 30, and more years come get an expungement, and boom, suddenly they can possess firearms again. So I love doing that, and you hear me talk about that here on the show. But in a red flag proceeding, which is a civil proceeding, even if you're found not to be dangerous, prior to House Enrolled Act 1137 going into effect, you could not go back and expunge that off your record. It just sat there. It just sat there on your history that anybody can look up. Anybody goes to my case, plugs in your name on My Case Indiana, and boom, there it comes. And it shows that you've been accused of being dangerous and had guns seized from you. Now, it will also show that you were found to then not be dangerous. But as I've said here on the show, and I've been pushing for support for this bill, people lost jobs, lost relationships, lost volunteer opportunities, and worse. And so anyway, we had that signed into law. Let me tell you the second problem. And we tried to get to this session, and because there has to be an appropriation, because there's money involved, we weren't able to get it done. We're going to come right back next session and take another swing at this, and I think we can get it done. But get this, because it's a civil proceeding, and even though the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution, you shall not be deprived of your rights, freedoms, property, or your liberty without due process of law, that in a red flag proceeding, there's no right to counsel. There's no right to a lawyer. And let me tell you how this works. And in some counties, it's worse than others. And in Hamilton County, and listen, Greg Garrison, elected prosecutor, a former coworker, had a beautiful, awesome show here on WIBC for many, many years. I love listening to him. I miss hearing him on the radio. And he and I are personal friends. But you know what Hamilton County does in a red flag case? As soon as it's filed, the prosecutors in Hamilton County, they serve discovery in the form of request for production of documents. They want all your medical records. They file interrogatories, which are written questions asking you a whole series of questions, and then they file what are called requests for admissions. And they'll say things like, well, admit that on such and such a night were in possession of a firearm. And admit on such and such a night that you threatened to hurt somebody or you threatened to hurt yourself. And admit the following. And they file what are called requests for admissions. And then they file what's called a motion for expedited discovery. That means there's typically you have 30 days to respond to requests for admissions, requests for production of documents, or interrogatories. But they say no, because there's going to be a hearing very quickly in 14 days. We need expedited discovery, so you have to respond to these in 5 days. You think the average person, and by the way, a lot of the times people get an envelope in the mail, they don't even open it for 5 days, or they don't know what it is, or they open it and they don't understand it. And requests for admissions, if not responded to on time, are actually deemed admitted. So it's like, oh, you didn't respond? Oops. Now, I'm not seeing a case where a judge stuck a respondent, that's what we call you in a civil case, in a red flag case, where they stuck you with those admissions. But under the law, they certainly could. And so people that have never been involved in the criminal justice system or the justice system, period, and this is a civil case, they don't understand what's going on. Then they get a notice that there's a hearing. A lot of times people think this is just some kind of an initial hearing that, like you show up at the first hearing in a criminal case where they say, do you have a lawyer? Do we need to appoint you a lawyer? Do we need to set bond? But in a red flag case, the hearing to determine whether you're dangerous or not, the only hearing you're going to get, at least for the first 180 days, is that hearing that gets scheduled. People show up without a lawyer, not having any idea what's going on. They then are up against a professional prosecutor who's handled dozens and dozens of red flag cases. And how likely is it in that moment that you think they're going to win that case? That person who's not represented by counsel up against a professional prosecutor. And the prosecutors, they've got witnesses, they've got the police officers who responded, they've got whomever, and a person's looking around going, oh, wait a minute, this is the hearing? I don't have a lawyer. Can I get a lawyer? There's no right to a lawyer in a civil case. That's the issue we still need to fix. That's the issue that we still need to fix. with red flag laws. Because if you can lose a constitutional freedom, because make no mistake, any guns you possess are taken from you, you're declared a prohibited possessor where you cannot possess guns into the future until a judge finds you're no longer dangerous. So you have lost a constitutional right. And how is it consistent with basic requirements of due process that you can lose that essential liberty guaranteed to you by the Constitution, but you have no right to counsel? That's not due process. That's not due process. And by the way, what I would love to have happen between now and next legislative session is somebody contact me. I'm not soliciting work here so much as an opportunity to fix this in the court system. Because if somebody were to contact me and said, Guy, I didn't have a lawyer, and I requested a lawyer, and the judge said, well, it's a civil proceeding, you don't get a lawyer. And so I got my ass handed to me by a professional prosecutor in a red flag case, and now I'm prohibited from possessing firearms. I would like to take that case. I would like to appeal that case on basic due process grounds and argue that you've lost due process, you were deprived due process, you've now lost a constitutional freedom, and that's inconsistent with the 14th Amendment guarantee of due process. As to the states, it's guaranteed in federal proceedings in the Fifth Amendment as well. Love to do that, but that's what's going on. But thanks to Governor Braun, with all the stuff going on and all the controversy and the heated rhetoric around property taxes, which I completely get. Listen, I was hoping for a lot more relief than I'm going to get on property taxes, and I was hoping for that for every other Hoosier as well. It looks like a complete farce what they've done so far. I'm hearing now that Governor Braun and Lieutenant Governor Beckwith are not happy with it, having read the details. So we'll see whether there's a veto, whether there's more going on property taxes. But you don't turn into the Gun Guy Show. Tune into the Gun Guy Show to hear about property taxes. We're going to be back and talk more about 2A issues when we go forward. Give us a call. Our regular phone number, I think, producer Jack will tell me, is working, 317-239-9393. We got good news from the IT department. They said it's working, so it's 317-239-9393. Join the discussion. Any 2A related issue you want to talk about right here on the show, give us a call. Producer Jack will get you right on the air, 317-239-9393. Right now we're taking a break. This is Guy Relford on The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Life moves fast.
Another new directive from Donald Trump.
President Trump will not be deterred to make our federal government more efficient.
So does the news.
We expect those meetings to take place very soon.
Decisions made today.
I'm not a big fan of the Atlantic.
No threats to national security.
Could impact you tomorrow.
Accountability and transparency.
What's next?
You never know what's going to happen.
Need to know what happened.
We're already tracking it. Stay in the know while you're on the go on 93 WIBC.
Guy Relford for Tactical Firearms Training. Our next Essentials of Indiana Gun Law class is coming up on May 10th. That's May 10th at Indy Arms on the northeast side. We'd love to have you there. It's 4.5 to 5 hours of the most comprehensive legal information you need as an Indiana gun owner. And we'd love to have you there for exactly that reason. You can sign up right online. And again, this covers things like the use of force in self-defense, how you can avoid commonly prosecuted crimes like pointing a firearm, criminal recklessness with a deadly weapon, intimidation with a deadly weapon. I've defended many of all those cases, and I would love to educate people so they can avoid being caught up in the criminal justice system. That and a whole bunch more, where you can and cannot carry your firearm under both state and federal law, and a whole bunch more. So check it out. It's at tactical-firearms.com. Just click on upcoming courses at tactical-firearms.com.
Premier Deck Coating, the ultimate deck protection. Who are they? Well, they're a sister company of Rhino Shield, and Premier Deck Coating is the product you need if you're tired of applying the same old stain and paint every couple of years to your deck. It's Terry, Stacy, and David and I have a deck that's probably 25 years old. The countless hours and the money that we spend on maintaining that deck never ends. And then we heard about Premier Deck Coating. family owned, based right here in Indy, and they are going to completely transform our deck with their special formulated product, which repels moisture, scratch resistant in virtually any color that we want, and backed by a 10-year guarantee. No more spending time staining or painting every year. Premier Deck Coating will keep our deck looking great for years to come. Premier Deck Coating can also do fences and pergolas too. For a free quote, call 317-696-4071 or visit premierdeckcoating.com.
Comcast Business helps turn today's small businesses into engines of modern business. It's how restaurants become reliably up and running neighborhood favorites. How retailers become seamlessly restocking, cyber-securing, must-visit shops. And how healthcare offices become the data-managing caregivers that we all depend on. With reliable connectivity, enhanced cybersecurity, advanced fiber solutions, and Wi-Fi backup, Comcast Business is powering the engine of modern business. Powering possibilities.
Now through May 4th, new customers can get started with 300 megabit internet and Security Edge for $69 a month for 24 months. And ask how to get free installation on qualifying bundles. Plus, find out how to get a $500 prepaid card on a qualifying gig bundle. Call today. Restrictions apply. Not available in all areas. Requires enrollment in paperless billing and automatic payments with bank account. Equipment, taxes, and other fees extra. After 24 months, regular rates apply.
It's now open. PA Jewelers at the Farmhouse in Brownsburg, right in front of Premier Arms on Green Street. You got to see the selection. Newly expanded, the gold, the diamonds, the silver, the gemstones, the local artists, and of course, that watch collection. Guys, you got to trust me on this one right here. PA Jewelers at the Farmhouse in Brownsburg, 317-456-4010. That's 456-4010. Or find them online at pajewelers.jewelry. That's pajewelers.jewelry.
While retinitis pigmentosa takes Mark's vision, his family gives him hope, whether at the family business or at home with his wife and sons. He knows he's not fighting alone. For 50 years, the Foundation Fighting Blindness has funded research into treatments and cures for blinding retinal diseases, providing hope to people with vision loss. And for Mark, winning the fight means being there for his family. The Foundation Fighting Blindness. Together, we're winning. Help us end blinding diseases at fightingblindness.org.
You ready to build your custom dream home? Check out Joyner Homes, based out of Greenfield. See one of their model homes in person anytime. It is a great way for you to experience the customization and quality of a Joyner Homes custom-built home. Plus, you can meet with a new home specialist to learn about their building process. Available lots if you don't already have one. Find out about floor plans and where they build. Model homes are open 7 days a week from noon to 5, and walk-ins are welcome. Find out more at joynerhomes.com.
Together, we can provide 1 billion meals by 2030, because everyone should be welcome at the table. Learn more at nourishingneighbors.com.
No Kid Hungry is providing healthy meals and hope to hungry kids so they can build better futures. Learn more at helpnokidhungry.org.
Second to none on the Second Amendment. This is The Gun Guy with Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back. I'm Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. By the way, just quickly, I'm going to get away from politics a little bit on tonight's show and get into some of the more fun discussions we have about firearms, carrying firearms, accessories, some of the things that you see a lot of chat about out on social media and otherwise. And there's a lot of bad information out there. There's a lot of disagreement on some basic things about things like accessories and right kind of firearm for home defense. And I thought it'd be kind of fun to get away from politics a little bit and get back to really more of what we used to do early in the show, is just talk about kind of some fun gun nut kind of material. By the way, in my vernacular, gun nut is a term of endearment. So if you get called one of those, or if I call you one of those, hey, that means you're my brother, because the term certainly applies to me. In fact, I have kind of a code. I'll be talking to my wife or my son, and there'll be a question like, "Hey, what are you gonna do this weekend?" And I'll just smile and go, "Gun stuff." that can be going to the range. That can be working on guns. That can be cleaning guns. Or all the above is just gun stuff. And what are you doing this afternoon? I got some gun stuff to do. And listen, weather's improving dramatically, and so I'm going to be out shooting sporting clays. I've done a little bit over the winter, but once the weather gets nice, it's a lot more pleasant to be outside. I love shooting outdoors. Sporting clays, I'll tell you what, if you haven't shot sporting clays yet, I was a late adopter, man. I was a late participant in shooting sporting clays. I was well into my 50s. And my friend Brian Poindexter, city court judge in Carmel, who I've known for years and years, and he came to my office one day. He called me. He said, "Hey, you got some time? I want to come talk to you." And I said, "Absolutely." And he came by and he said, "Hey, I'm shooting in a fundraiser." And this was, I believe, for the original election, the original campaign when Eric Holcomb was running for governor. And listen, a lot of us looking back on the years of the governorship of Eric Holcomb have some issues, certainly have some issues around some of the decisions during COVID, some of that. But early on, I was a supporter, certainly, of Governor Holcomb. And I've met him. I've been to the governor's residence, and I consider him to be a gentleman, even though we certainly disagree on some things. But Judge Poindexter asked me if I wanted to participate in a fundraiser. He said it's going to be out at Indiana Gun Club. And I had been to Indiana Gun Club. I had bought guns at Indiana Gun Club. And by the way, they're my friends out there. And since I started shooting sporting clays, I spent a lot more time. But I had already bought some high-end firearms. You're looking for a really nice high-end firearm, like a Wilson Combat, and Ed Brown, some of the really nicer high-end firearms. That's exactly what they have, and everything else there at Indiana Gun Club. But they're also a trap, skeet, and sporting clay range. And so the judge said, "I want you to be on my team where we're shooting competitively. We're shooting sporting clays for Holcomb for governor. Holcomb for Indiana, I think it was called." And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." And then I actually said, and this is after I'd had the Gun Guy show for many years and been involved with firearms, been an instructor. I'm a shotgun instructor. But when I teach shotgun classes and when I've taught shotgun classes over the years, it's all been self-defense shotgun. I mean, I teach shotgun so where, if a guy kicks your door in the middle of the night and you want to defend your home and your family with a shotgun, I'm the guy to teach you how to do that. And I've taken a lot of training in that. I've taught a lot of that. But sporting clays was a whole new thing. And so I literally said, here I'm already, I'm already the gun guy on the radio. And I had to go, "Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do that. By the way, what are sporting clays? Is that like trap or skeet?" And the judge kind of laughed and said, "Well, Guy, it's a little like trap and skeet in that you're shooting clay pigeons, but it's more like golf with a shotgun. Because in sporting clays, there are multiple different stations. And at Indiana Gun Club is typically set up for 12. They can expand that and add more stations. But you go out there and every station is different. And they can change from visit to visit. When you go out and shoot, they can change each station to where the traps are, what direction the birds go, how high they go, how fast they go, what direction they go, what angle they're coming at you or away from you or crossing you. Totally different." And I said, "Well, gosh, that sounds like a lot of fun. I mean," I go, "I've got some great self-defense shotguns. I'm not sure any of them are appropriate. My 13-inch short-barreled shotgun Remington 870 I built for home defense. I'm not sure it'd be the best sporting clay shotgun. Got a beautiful Benelli M4 semi-automatic." And he goes, "Oh, no, we'll hook you up." And they have loaner guns out there. And he kind of explained it more to me. And he said, "In fact, if you're not doing anything later this afternoon, the team, there were 3 other people, judge and 2 other people. He said, we're going to go out and practice, and you're welcome to come out. I'll show you the ropes." So I went out, and I can't say I was particularly good the first time that afternoon, but I fell in love with it. The first time you hit a clay pigeon, and it just sort of evaporates in this cloud of orange dust. That's just something you go, "Okay, I like that. That was fun." And I like the fact that every station's different, a lot of variety. You're not standing in one place shooting at a paper target for a couple hours. I love doing that too, make no mistake. But it's fun, and you get some exercise, you walk a couple miles, it's like playing golf. And so I love the hell out of it. When I went back in, I had a loaner gun. When I went back in, I scheduled a pro lesson, I should say. And they had this wonderful pro, and I got to be good friends with this man. Bob Self was his name. He was a pro out there, a multi-time world champion in sporting clays. I mean, just really a treasure to have right here in Indiana and right there at Indiana Gun Club. And I scheduled a class for the next day, which is a Saturday, with Bob, and I spent an hour where Bob taught me the basics, and that was the smartest thing I could have possibly done. And then I went out on my own, and at Indiana Gun Club, you can actually they have little timers on the launchers where each station you can say I'm solo and hit a button which birds you want, and it'll time it down. It sort of beeps at you, and then it launches the bird. So you don't even have to have someone launching the birds for you like you do some other places. So you can shoot by yourself, which is kind of cool. It's not nearly as fun as going out and shooting with buddies, with friends and family, but it's still pretty damn cool. So I did it by myself, and then the next day was the tournament, and I did pretty well. In fact, in the afternoon session, I hit 49 out of 50, and I thought, oh, I'm a natural. I'm dominating this, and I got like top shot, and I got some swag. I got like a range bag, and I'm like, oh, I'm a natural. I'm going to dominate this. So then I signed up for National Sporting Clay Association because I'm thinking, oh, I'm such a natural. I'm going to compete. I'm going to dominate and win medals and do, and all the fun stuff you get when you win in competition. And I'm a competitive guy. I like to compete. So then I showed up to my first registered shoot, they call them, which is a tournament against all the other people that are registered shooters that go to competitions. And I'm in the lowest class. It was E class. Goes up to all the way up to A, and then double A, and then master. And that's the day I learned the difference between fundraiser birds that they have set up for fundraisers like we did for the Holcomb fundraiser, and tournament birds where you have some of the best shooters anywhere in the country. And I think there's only like 20 master level shooters in Indiana. There may be more of that now. And they're pretty much all there. And that's the day I learned the difference between fundraiser birds, where they basically kind of launch them up there and they float around for a while and basically scream, hey guys, shoot me right here. Shoot me, shoot me. And tournament birds where you're going, where the hell did that thing go? And what direction is that even going? And what do you mean I got to shoot it all the way out there at that distance? Or what do you mean it's coming back at me and it's dipping, it's diving, and it's turning, and it's doing all these crazy things they can program them to do? And I think even though at one point in that tournament I hit 49 out of 50, in my first registered shoot, I think I hit 48 out of 100. I mean, less than 50%. And I was humbled, I was embarrassed, but then I was hooked, and I went, all right, I'm going to get this. I'm going to compete in this, and so I did, and for years and years. And COVID kind of slowed me down. I need to get back at it, and that was kind of an unplanned departure on the show. But listen, if you're thinking about shooting sporting clays, especially with the weather turning nice, man, go out and see my friends at Indiana Gun Club. They've got loaner guns. You want to buy a gun? In fact, the most expensive gun I own now is actually my long range. It's called an advanced sniper rifle from Bell Precision Rifles. They built for me. It's got really high-end optics on it. But right after that is my sporting clay gun. And I kept trading up, because I kept having shotgun envy when I would go out and shoot with my friends who had been doing it for a while. I'm like, okay, that's a cooler gun. Okay, that's definitely a cooler gun. And I don't have anywhere near what some of these guys have been doing it for 30 and 40 years, have these incredibly nice sporting clay shotguns. I haven't quite gotten there, but I have a passable gun now that I like, and it's just a hell of a lot of fun. So I'll tell you what, I've blown past the bottom of the hour. I'm going to take a break. I believe we have a couple of people on the phone. Oh, we certainly do. We're going to take a break at the bottom of the hour, come back and go right to the phone lines. So we'll get to the people who have called in. Thanks for that. Join the discussion, 317-239-9393. This is Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Another update is just minutes away.
China escalates the trade war, upping the charge on American imports there to 125%. Stock futures are rising the day after another plunge.
Hear the news.
Visas for several people who attend IU have been revoked. Involvement in the pro-Palestinian protests.
As events happen.
There were several structures that had roof damage.
EF1 tornado in Princeton, Indiana.
We'll happen to be there.
Trees uprooted.
93 WIBC Mobile News.
Right now, get Lincoln's employee pricing for everyone on most new Lincolns at Tom Roush Lincoln. Get up to $20,000 off select 2024 Lincoln Navigators, up to $8,000 off select 2024 Lincoln Nautilus, or up to $7,000 off select 2024 Lincoln Corsair at Tom Roush Lincoln in Fishers. Navigator MSRP $105,575, Nautilus MSRP $61,995, Corsair MSRP $47,820. Offers good through 4/30/2025. Navigators excluded from employee pricing. Subject to credit approval. See dealer for complete offer details.
Hey folks, Scott Wilson here from Wilson Farm Market. Even in winter, we're bringing you the best in farm fresh flavors. Stop in for our fresh salad bar, hot and crispy wing bar, and a cheese selection that is second to none. Got a sweet tooth? Our homemade pies, creamy fudge, and old-fashioned candy will hit the spot. Come see us on US 31 just north of Carmel. We're open every day 9 to 6. At Wilson Farm Market, we're all about fresh, local, and delicious. See you soon.
It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But this one you need to hear. $16.5 billion. That's how much money in refunds the IRS flagged for possible identity fraud last year. Now, here's a good number. $100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. Oh, one last number. Save up to 40% your first year with promo code NEWS. Visit LifeLock.com for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.
500 Guns is just east of the Speedway and the Viaduct on 16th Street. 500 Guns is your classic old-school gun shop with the best service in Indy. You have to experience it to believe it. Joe and Guy Montgomery and their friendly staff are there to help you if you're a first-time gun owner or looking to add to your collection. They buy and sell single guns or entire collections. Visit 500 Guns today on West 16th Street, just east of the Speedway, or find 500 Guns on Facebook.
Fox News, I'm Jane Fergus. Attorneys for pro-Palestinian activist Mahmoud Khalil are expected to fight his deportation after a federal judge ruled it to be legal.
The judge cited a memo from Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who wrote that Khalil's beliefs, statements, or associations would compromise U.S. foreign policy interest.
That's Fox's CB Cotton reporting. Don't worry about your entitlements. That's what Republican New Jersey Congressman Jeff Van Drew tells Fox News Live after the House passed President Trump's budget blueprint this week.
We're not going to hurt Social Security, and we are not going to hurt Medicare. They say that this resolution, which didn't even mention the word Medicaid, this resolution cut Medicaid. No, it did not.
Democrats say the plan will give tax cuts to billionaires. America's listening to Fox News.
April showers can bring plumbing downers, and my friends at Hope Plumbing don't want you to get caught in a flood this spring. Make sure your sump pump is working properly to avoid any damage. During the month of April, call Hope Plumbing and get a free sump pump with the purchase of a new battery backup system. A sump pump is vital to protecting your home from heavy rains, so you don't want to delay in calling Hope Plumbing. The number is 641-HOPE. That's 641-HOPE, or visit them online at hopeplumbing.com.
If Ernest Hemingway was alive today, would he say this to you?
Shakespeare, Mark Twain, Edgar Allan Poe, all great writers. And after reading your book, I simply must add you to the list.
Wait, you don't have a book yet, so make a free call to Page Publishing. Turn your book idea into publishing gold.
800-215-6818. 800-215-6818. That's 800-215-6818.
Welcome to Tire Discounters. Oh, hiya, Phantom.
Mike, I think I saw a fox on my way in.
Oh, that was the Carfax Carfox. He was congratulating us on our Carfax Top-Rated Service Center Award.
I have always rated Tire Discounters at the very top.
Oh, thanks. So does Carfax. And not just for tires, but for all our services, too.
Alignment, brakes, shocks, and struts, and more.
Yes, sir.
But, Mike, do you think people believe Carfax over me?
Well, you are the Phantom tire buyer.
Exactly.
Hey, y'all, I'm Blake Shelton. Being from Oklahoma, I know a thing or two about natural disasters. Tornadoes are common where I'm from and have affected my life and the lives of people I care about. No matter where you live, be aware of the dangers in your area and have a plan. You can create an emergency kit, come up with an evacuation plan, and know where to seek shelter. You never know when a disaster may hit. These simple steps can help save a life. This message is brought to you by the U.S. Air Force.
The show about gun rights, gun safety, and responsible gun ownership. This is The Gun Guy with Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back. I'm Guy Relford on The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. Let's go right to the phone lines, and Jerry has called in. Jerry, welcome to The Gun Guy Show.
How you doing, Guy?
Good, man. You doing all right?
Doing well, thank you. Hey, got a curious question. You talked about getting expunged.
Uh-huh.
I had a felony in 1980, and ever since I've not gotten any trouble or done anything stupid, and was hoping I could get that expunged.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Jerry, we want to talk about what it was or anything along those lines, but most felonies you can get expunged, especially nonviolent felonies and non-sex crimes. So if that applies, man, look me up at relfordlaw.com. You can contact me through the website, and I'll bounce back to you, and we'll talk about whether we can get that done for you. We can restore your gun rights for you.
That's what I was wanting to hear. I appreciate it, guys.
Absolutely, man. No, thanks for calling. I'd be glad to help. Let's go back to the phone lines, and we've got Jeff. Jeff, welcome to the Gun Guy Show.
Hey, Guy. First of all, thank you for everything you do for the Second Amendment and everything in the state of Indiana and across the country.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that.
Quick story for you. This is kind of like advice for the people that are listening. I'm a longtime listener of WIBC and, of course, your show for over 50 years. So a couple months ago, I got pulled over coming down 37. I had a tail light out on a trailer I was hauling home.
Okay.
I'm in the dating business. I get pulled over. The officer was behind me with the lights on for like 2 or 3 minutes, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's kind of a long time, right?"
Mm-hmm.
Well, it turns out I take my .40 that I was carrying. I have 2 clips on the console. It's in my .40 is loaded too. I unload it. I put it over in the passenger seat. I roll the window down, and I put both hands on the wheel. Now, this is my point to people that are listening. If you just calm down. The officer came up to the car. I said, "Is there a problem?" He said, "You have a tail light out." And he said, "Have you been drinking?" I said, "No, sir." He said, "Well, I ran your plates, and it looks like you had a DUI in 1982. I said, "Sir, I messed up 43 years ago.
Yeah.
I was on leave from the Falklands before I went to Grenada in 83. Now, look, I was a Marine." And he said, "Look, everything is okay. Put everything back together. I put my clip back in," and he let me go. So if you guys don't panic and let everyone know, the officer was half my age, and the whole thing turned out great because that's the way that you handle that situation.
Yeah, no, Jeff, I mean, it's generally good advice. A couple reflections on Jeff's story, and I cover this in my Essentials of Indiana Gun Law class. And Jeff, I'm glad everything worked out great for you. Thanks for your support, and thanks for listening to the show. I would not recommend that somebody handle their gun during a traffic stop. I mean, you unloaded it, and you made it clear that it was safe for the officer and safe for you, and you put your hands at 10 and 2, and that was all very smart. But that could go south with if an officer sees you, especially the second officer that pulls up to assist or back up, sees you handling a gun, that can potentially go south. So I would leave the gun where it is. And then if you have a license to carry a handgun, a lot of people don't know this, if you get pulled over, once they run your driver's license, not your plate, but your driver's license, the officer is actually told that you have a license to carry. So a lot of times they will just ask you, is there a gun in the car? Where's the gun? If you have a license to carry, they'll assume that you do. Most officers anymore, with the prevalence of guns in cars, especially with people that have licenses, are now under constitutional carry, even without licenses. Now, it doesn't freak most officers out. Now, again, I have the horror stories. People call the show. People call me at my office, or they comment at my gun law class, and they'll tell me some horror story of something that happened to them when a cop freaked out because they had a gun. But what I do, since I have my lifetime license, when the officer asks for license, registration, proof of insurance, I just put my gun license right on top and hand it to him. I don't say a word about the gun. I don't touch the gun. I don't handle the gun. I don't make the gun visible. If it's, in the console, it's in the console. If it's in a holster, which is more likely with me, or maybe one each, then I just leave it where it is. I put my gun license right on top, my handgun license, and invariably they go, "I take it there's a gun in the car." Yes, there is. And sometimes they'll say, "Where is it?" "It's in a holster on my right hip." "It's in a holster. I'm carrying appendix today." And I've had 4 different officers say, "Well, let's just leave it where it is, shall we?" One Carmel police officer, who was a great guy, said, "Well, if you don't touch yours, I won't touch mine." I said, "I like that deal. Sounds perfect." So I'm glad it worked out great for Jeff. I don't recommend handling the gun, unloading the gun, going through that, because that has some real danger associated with it if an officer sees you handling a gun in your car. But There are some basic rules. Leave it where it is. Don't touch it. You don't have to inform an officer in Indiana that there's a gun in the car. I have done that voluntarily by handing them my handgun license, and it's worked out really well for me. I could do a whole show on traffic stops. We'll leave it right there. Well, to go ahead and take the break here at the 3/4 hour, come back and wrap up the first hour of the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Life moves fast.
Another new directive from Donald Trump.
President Trump will not be deterred to make our federal government more efficient.
So does the news.
We expect those meetings to take place very soon.
Decisions made today.
I'm not a big fan of the Atlantic.
No threats to national security.
Could impact you tomorrow.
Accountability and transparency.
What's next?
You never know what's going to happen.
Need to know what happened.
We're already tracking it. Stay in the know while you're on the go on 93 WIBC.
Guy Relford for the law offices of Guy Relford. You know, we just had a caller asked about expungement. If that applies to you or a family member or loved one, let us know, and we can talk about whether we can restore your gun rights and expunge that conviction off your record, even if you have a conviction for a crime of domestic violence. If it's been at least 5 years since that conviction, as a misdemeanor, a lot of times we can restore your rights. It's a separate process, but we do that often as well. Any of that applies to you, you want to discuss more about that, just contact us through the website. It's relfordlaw.com, relfordlaw.com.
You let him try violin because you love him. And if you love him that much, love him enough to make sure he's buckled up and in the back seat. Find out more at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Look around. Spring is here. And no matter what you're planning or planting, Hubler's got you covered for 100,000 miles. So spring forward in a Hubler quality pre-owned vehicle, including Chevys, Fords, Toyotas, GMCs, Buicks, Nissans, Acuras, Mazdas, Hondas, and many more. All makes, all models, certified vehicles, luxury vehicles, even the hard-to-find ones. Shop any of Hubler's 13 locations and choose from over 2,000 vehicles. Every Hubler Q-certified vehicle is covered by a 100,000-mile limited powertrain warranty, plus a 128-point vehicle inspection and a free Carfax history report. So spring forward, knowing Hubler's got you covered for 100,000 miles. Visit Hubler.com or any of our 13 locations.
Hubler's got you covered. Cover me!
Warranty on select models less than 9 years old.
Have you seen the color at Sundown Gardens? The greenhouse is bursting with an incredible selection of great tropical plants. Mandevillas, ferns, palms, and more, all in stock now at Sundown. There's just so much going on around the garden center, nursery, and greenhouse. You have to stop in and see it all for yourself. This week, they also have 50% off all Easter decor in Miss Mary's gift shop. Visit Sundown Gardens for all things spring. Sundown Gardens is located on the corner of 186th Street and Spring Mill Road in Westfield. SundownGardens.com.
Good times are always in stock at Crown Liquors and have been since 1989. For a limited time, get throwback pricing. Svedka vodka half gallons are only $9.99. Basil Hayden bourbon only $29.99. Jack Daniel's 750s only $17.99. Premium Don Julio Reposado only $39.99. And Kendall Jackson Chardonnay only $10.99. Pick up ice cold 12 packs of Corona Modelo family only $17.99. Huge savings on top sellers at Crown Liquors.
Why'd I go to the doctor? My heart would race just taking my son to practice. It didn't feel right. So I got checked out. Turns out I have atrial fibrillation, which increases the risk of stroke about 5 times.
Symptoms like irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain, shortness of breath, fatigue, or lightheadedness can come and go. But if it's AFib, the risk of stroke remains. If you have symptoms, contact a doctor.
I'm so glad I did.
Visit NoTimeToWait.com. Sponsored by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
Now that spring is here, storms can happen at any time. WIBC will alert you to severe weather from the Chapman Heating Storm Desk. For all your heating, air conditioning, plumbing, and drains, call the man for all seasons. Chapman. Go to ChapmanHeating.com.
Your rights, your responsibilities, your guns. This is The Gun Guy with Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back. We've got a little bit of a short segment here, but let's go to the phone lines. Greg's been holding for a while. Greg, welcome to the Gun Guy Show.
Hi, Guy. Thanks for taking my call.
Absolutely.
We've crossed paths at a couple committee hearings over the last couple sessions. So,
oh, yeah, absolutely. Thanks for your incredible support. You do a great job.
Well, thank you very much. I've developed a bit of a hobby in it, so I've been testifying on several things over the last couple of sessions. Anyway, I had a quick question. So if a person has their firearms seized by law enforcement, does that agency then have a duty to store and maintain those firearms in good condition? Do they have any responsibilities on that end?
That's a great question, Greg, and it depends on under what circumstance they're seized. In the revisions we made to the red flag law in 2019, a great addition that we put into that law at that time, and this was actually pushed by NRA, and it was something they've done in other states, and I agreed with them 1,000%, is we actually put into the statute, the red flag statute, that says if firearms are seized pursuant to the red flag law, that a couple of things. One, those firearms can be held by a quote-unquote responsible person, and have to get the judge's permission for this, but a person that comes in and says, yes, I can store them securely, and I promise not to give them back to the person alleged to be dangerous until they're found to be not dangerous, and then a responsible person can store them so they don't have to sit in some moldy, damp, rusty or rust-inducing environment at a property room of a police department. But in addition, that more directly answers your question, Greg, if the firearms are not stored responsibly and are damaged through rust, through whatever means, and they're not delivered back to the person at the end of the day in the same condition, or at least if they're returned in a damaged condition, it now says right in the red flag statute that the police department's liable for that. Because otherwise, and this applies, it probably applies in most other circumstances. Like if you say you get pulled over for an OWI, and by the way, people say DUI. Most time it's actually OWI, because the crime in Indiana is operating a motor vehicle while intoxicated. So operating while intoxicated, OWI. But people get pulled over for an OWI. You got a gun in the car. Well, there's not a separate crime for having a gun in your car, but your firearm's going to be seized. They're not going to leave it in your car when they impound your car, so they're going to inventory your car. They're going to seize your firearm, and it's going to sit in a property room until you can get it back. And there's a whole other issue. In fact, I'll address this at the top of the hour once we come back after the break about what's going on in Marion County, and there's going to be litigation on this point. In fact, I'm collaborating with attorneys in other cities on this point right now, but they're probably not liable under what's called tort claims immunity, and that's a problem. So it kind of depends on the circumstances under which your guns are seized, Greg, in order to tell you what the answer. But the good news is we fixed that in the context of the red flag statute. That's wrapping up hour number one. We need to take a break. We'll be right back. This is Guy Relford on The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Meanwhile, at Xfinity. So, influencer life going well?
Oh, yeah. I'm up to 32 followers.
Oh, that's something.
Yeah, posting my tap dancing videos is easier than ever because we engineered Xfinity Internet with 99.99% network reliability.
Plus, Xfinity Mobile with Wi-Fi Power Boost gives you ultra-fast Wi-Fi at home and on the go. But wait, tap dancing? You don't tap dance.
Hey, what I lack in skill, I make up with passion.
Do more of what you love and love how fast you do it with Xfinity Internet and mobile. Now through April 17th, get 300 megabit Xfinity Internet and one unlimited mobile line together for $30 a month for 1 year and save $1,000 in your first year over Verizon and AT&T. Learn more at Xfinity.com. Requires paperless billing and autopay with stored bank account. Restrictions apply. Equipment, taxes, and fees extra. After promo, regular rate supply. Savings compared to Verizon 5G Internet plus one unlimited welcome line and AT&T Internet 300 plus one unlimited starter SL line. Xfinity Internet required. Actual speeds vary. Reduced speeds after 30 gigabits of usage per line. Data thresholds and actual savings vary.
Lanny went to college and racked up huge debt.
A little bit over $100,000.
For a degree he couldn't use? Now what?
I had a friend that went to my computer career.
They even helped him get hired immediately after graduation.
One of the things I love about IT is that you can work from anywhere you want.
You could become an IT pro in just months, including cybersecurity and the basics of AI with zero experience at mycomputercareer.edu.
It worked for me, and I know it can work for you.
This is one student's experience. Individual results vary.
Men over 40, struggling with low energy, not feeling like yourself. Low T Center's testosterone replacement therapy is the solution. Get started today. Visit one of their conveniently located clinics, meet a medical provider, and get back to feeling your best.
This month only, the consultation is free. Treatment is tailor-made just for you, and it's covered by most health insurance. Get treated at a Low T Center near you or even in the comfort of your home. Book your appointment now at lowtcenter.com. lowtcenter.com.
It's the Bash Sale, the biggest automotive sale in history. Your local Bill Estes dealerships are coming in hot with deals on trucks you don't want to miss. We have a huge selection of trucks at one easy online stop. Brand new Chevy, Ford, GMC, Jeep, Ram, and Toyota trucks with a massive pre-owned selection too. Plus, our fair and direct upfront pricing means what you see is what you pay. Shift into savings during the Bash Sale, only at Bill Estes dealerships, and drive away in your dream truck today. Online at BillEstesTrucks.com.
Reach your fitness goals in 2025 with a 20-minute once-a-week program at Exercise Inc. 5 locations now in Fishers. Visit exerciseinc.com.
What if the next time you painted your home was the last time you painted your home?
Our home has had Rhino Shield for 10 years.
Rhino Shield. Call 888-RHINO-41. Don't paint, don't vinyl. Go Rhino.
For those fortunate enough to help the person who has always been their hero, find the care guides you need to help at aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Broadcasting from the Technology Recycler Studios, this is Indy's Mobile News, 93 WIBC. WIBC HD1 Indianapolis. The news starts now.
Nuclear negotiations off to a good start. Fox News, I'm Jane Fergus. High praise all around for the first round of nuclear talks between the U.S. and Iran.
Iran's foreign minister called the discussions constructive and promising. Oman's top diplomat, who hosted both leaders in Oman, said, quote, "I would like to thank my two colleagues for this engagement, which took place in a friendly atmosphere, conducive to bridging viewpoints and ultimately achieving regional and global peace, security, and stability. We will continue to work together and put further efforts to assist in arriving at this goal." And here was President Trump once again aboard Air Force One talking about what he wants to see from Iran.
I want them not to have a nuclear weapon. I want Iran to be a wonderful, great, happy country.
Iranian officials said after the 2-hour meeting in Oman they'd like to meet again next week.
Fox's Lucas Tomlinson reporting from the White House. A legal victory for the Trump administration. A federal judge ruling that a pro-Palestinian activist can be deported.
An immigration judge overseeing Mahmoud Khalil's immigration hearing in Louisiana on Friday is citing a memo that Secretary of State Marco Rubio submitted this week. Rubio says Khalil's presence in the U.S. would undermine efforts to fight anti-Semitism. Khalil's attorneys, though, are calling the ruling a dangerous precedent, saying he hasn't been charged with a crime, and they're accusing the government of encroaching on his First Amendment rights. Khalil's legal team says he was merely a negotiator for Columbia students who are protesting against the war in Gaza, but Rubio says the administration has the authority to remove Khalil because his actions don't align with U.S. foreign policy.
Fox's Madeline Rivera. Former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro remains hospitalized with abdominal pain. Doctors say the pain is caused by a bowel obstruction related to long-term effects from when Bolsonaro was stabbed. America's listening to Fox News.
Stay on top of the latest forecast with America's Weather Team in the palm of your hands.
Here's the latest from America's Weather Center.
It's Fox weather updates throughout your busy day, every day.
That heat's going to be out there for one more day.
Temperatures being 30 degrees above average.
Put the power of over 100 meteorologists and the worldwide resources of Fox in your hands with the Fox Weather Podcast. Precise, personal, powerful. Subscribe and listen now at foxnewspodcasts.com. Connect to Fox News Audio on the Fox News app. Listen to hear your favorite hosts like Brian Kilmeade, Jimmy Fallon, and Guy Benson standing up for what's right, live and via podcast. Just click listen, then swipe right and hear the latest news updates on your time. And scroll down to hear the latest podcasts from Fox News. And it's even easier to listen in the car with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Get programming alerts and notifications. Fox News Audio is on the Fox News app. The voices America trusts. Download it now.
He's the
93 WIBC Mobile News. On the level, on the go.
Why your child may have to learn online on Monday. I'm Ryan Hedrick, and here's what's trending this hour. Some school districts in Indiana will not have in-person learning Monday. John Herrick explains why.
It's to allow teachers and staff to participate in the Indiana State Teachers Association Day of Action at the State House. The purpose of this day is to advocate for public school funding and collective bargaining rights. Among the school districts planning to do this are the Monroe County Community School Corporation, as well as the Metropolitan School District of Pike Township. The association's Day of Action is scheduled from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Monday. John Herrick, 93 WIBC Mobile News.
You probably remember the warehouse fire in Richmond back in 23 that forced thousands of Hoosiers to evacuate from their homes. There's a new lawsuit against the city of Richmond and the person who owns the plastic warehouse that burned. The lawsuit says they want the city to pay for the damages that include lost property, lost wages, and injuries related to the fire. The lawsuit also says that the owner of the warehouse in the city did not do enough to prevent that fire. The property tax bill backed so far by Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith and Governor Mike Braun is not really satisfactory to either one of them.
Which I'm going to tell you right now, ultimately where I want to see property taxes in Indiana is gone.
He says you never know what can happen. The Indiana Pacers will play the Milwaukee Bucks in the first round of the playoffs. The exact dates of the games have not been announced yet. Now your forecast from the American Standard Cooling Weather Center.
Sunny skies for today, high temperatures in the upper 50s. Tonight, mostly clear, becoming partly cloudy. Can't rule out a stray shower in the early morning. Low temperatures in the low 40s. I'm Wish TV Storm Track 8 meteorologist Ryan Morse for 93 WIBC.
Help DEA keep our communities safe and healthy by participating in National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day, Saturday, April 26th. Take action right in your own home by cleaning out your medicine cabinet of unneeded medications. Keep them safe, clean them out, take them back. Find a collection site near you at DEATakeback.com. Do your part to lower overdose deaths and prevent prescription drug misuse before it starts. That's DEATakeback.com.
We need each other because every someone needs someone else.
We need each other because when we work together, we can do so much more.
We connect more children with what they need to grow up healthy, educated, and safe. And that's what Child Fund is all about.
Because when you make someone's world better, you make everyone's world better.
Child Fund, because we need each other.
Learn more at childfund.org. That's childfund.org.
Quality Supply and Tool, your premier supplier of construction equipment, tools, and supplies, is hiring CDL drivers. Call Brian Myers at 317-690-2016.
There are screening tests to catch cancer early. Visit cancer.org/getscreened.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is the Second Amendment. And this is the Gun Guy.
Boom, 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 boom. Bang, 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 bang. Boom, 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 boom. Bang, bang, bang.
With Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back for hour number 2 of the Gun Guy Show here on 93 WIBC. Something I mentioned right before the break. And by the way, we've had fabulous callers tonight, as we always do. One gentleman looked like he had a really interesting question based on his conversation with producer Jack, and he dropped off after we had him on hold for a while. But man, I hope he has a chance to call back and join the discussion. You have something 2A related, something gun related you want to call in and discuss, a question you want to ask, give us a call, 317-239-9393, 317-239-9393. We're also streaming on the YouTube chat. There's a bunch of people on there. You can see a video of the show and engage in the chat feature. A lot of people are going back and forth on that. It's a little hard to keep track of when you're doing live radio, but I try to check it out a little bit between breaks. But give us a call. Join the discussion, 317-239-9393. But a topic I was discussing briefly before the break is this idea that when your gun is seized by police, you know, what obligations do they have to make sure that it's preserved, that it's not damaged? Well, not a lot. Not unless it's in the context of the red flag case, and we built those protections in there. But that's not the only problem. And I was just discussing this issue yesterday with my friend Kirk Freeman in Lafayette, because the Lafayette Police Department is doing the same thing that IMPD is doing here in Indianapolis. And listen, if you listen to the Gun Guy Show, you know I'm generally a supporter of law enforcement in general and IMPD in particular. And Rick Snyder, the FOP president of Lodge 86, we've had on the show many times. I consider him a good friend, and he represents the rank and file. But I'll tell you something I have a major problem with. And in fact, I'm looking specifically at litigation right now involving this, and that is that if your gun goes into the property room at IMPD, and listen, there are a lot of ways that your gun can go into the property room at IMPD. You know, people tend to immediately assume, well, you got arrested and the gun is evidence in a crime. Well, if that's the case, there's not really much to complain about, because if your gun is evidence in a crime, if you're accused of a crime and the gun itself is evidence, then police are going to hold that gun until your case is well over, as well as any potential appeal. So you're not getting that gun back if it's evidence in a case. But guns get seized in an awful lot of ways, other than because the owner of that gun is the victim, is the suspect in a crime. A lot of other ways. You can be the victim of a crime. For instance, let's say you get your house broken into. And it's a really good reason to have your guns locked up and secure, but let's say your house is broken into. Let's say you have them locked up in a safe, but thieves are able to defeat your safe, and they steal guns from you. You're the victim of a crime. And those guns are then eventually recovered. Let's say they solve the crime, and they find out who broke into your home. They recover your guns, and they bring those guns back in and put them in the property room. You then go to pick them up. They know whose house. IMPD, this is the problem. IMPD knows whose house those guns were stolen from. You reported them stolen. Let's say you had a record of all those guns. You had the serial numbers. I like to take pictures on each side of each one of my firearms, record the make, model, and serial number, and any accessories, certainly accessories that are worth some money, like optics and lights. I like to record all that, record serial numbers where serial numbers are available. A lot of my optics have serial numbers on them. I record all of that, and I try to keep it updated, which actually reminds me, as I'm doing the show on that topic, I need to update my list. I've bought some guns and accessorized some guns, built some short-barreled rifles, added some suppressors. I need to update my list. But a lot of people maintain an inventory. And let's say you deliver that inventory, make, model, and serial number of everything that was stolen, and they recover those exact guns that you reported stolen, that you have an inventory and pictures of. Do you know that IMPD, and I'm sure Lafayette got the idea from IMPD, but do you know that at IMPD, they will not return your gun to you until a couple of things happen. First of all, your guns, once they're released, let's say there's a detective on the case and the detective says, yeah, I don't need those guns anymore. So they're released by the detective involved, or they're released by the prosecutor's office because the person's pled guilty, or there's no criminal charges, or whatever it might be. So they say, yeah, we don't need those guns anymore. Well, then your guns go into a queue, and every gun taken in, and there was a big expose done on this by Wish TV. Richard Essex, I believe, was the reporter who did this, and I worked on the story with him, and we did a long interview that they used a lot of for his story. It's one of the longest stories I've ever seen in a local broadcast. It was like 12, 13, 14 minutes, if I remember correctly. But it did an expose on this. But first of all, they run ballistics, meaning they test fire your gun. They recover the spent projectile fired out of your gun. They take pictures of that under magnification. They recover the shell casing, take pictures of that, and they run all that against their database to see if the ballistics of that gun match any guns that were involved in crimes where they recovered other bullets or recovered other ballistic evidence. So they try to match it up. There can be no indication to them, no probable cause, no basis for any suspicion that your gun was ever used in a crime or has anything to do with anything that might be in their database. They run ballistics on every damn gun that comes in, and guess what? that queue, that time it takes to get through the process, because you got to wait behind every other gun that's in front of your gun to get reviewed and processed, ballistics to run on. They also run serial numbers on them to make sure they're not stolen. That can take literally a year. I've seen it take over 2 years with no suspicion that your gun was used in a crime. You're the victim of a crime. It includes that scenario. And you got to sit and wait all that period of time. But it gets worse. Then they finally say, okay, we're done with your gun. We ran ballistics. It's no longer needed in your case. So come get your gun. When you go down there, you have to have proof of purchase in the form of an original receipt. How many of us have the original receipts from guns we bought? In Indiana, it's totally legal to buy guns from other private individuals. There may be no receipt. And get this, this is embarrassing to say, but to the extent we're looking at litigation over this, and I'll go into what that litigation is going to look like and what the legal basis is for it here after the break. But you know who I've got lined up as the first plaintiff in this case? My soon-to-be 95-year-old mother. My mom on the 18th of this month turns 95 years old. That's right. How cool is that? My dad turned 96 2 days ago, and he's still kicking as well. But my 95-year-old mother has a gun in the Marion County property room, the IMPD property room. Why? Because some idiot that she hired that worked for her, she had a bunch of rental properties, and this lowlife did maintenance for her, had her gun in his car when he got pulled over and ultimately got arrested for possession of a firearm by a serious violent felon and drug charges. Didn't have anything to do with my mom other than the fact that he was driving her car and the gun was in the car. So they know whose gun it is. They knew whose car it was taken out of. And my mother had had this gun for I don't know how many years. She doesn't have an original receipt. They will not return it to her. They will not return it to her. And she's my mom. How embarrassing is that? I'm a two-way lawyer right here in Indiana, and I can't get that damn gun out of the property room. So guess what? We're gonna sue their ass, and we're gonna get a court order. I fully believe that says that what they're doing by putting these requirements on the transfer of firearms and the relinquishment of the firearms out of their control and returning them to the people that they know are the lawful owners, that's imposing their own requirements on the transfer of firearms that are not part of state law. They're doing that as local government, as a local government entity, what we call a political subdivision, which is the city of Indianapolis. And guess what that violates? The Indiana Firearms Preemption Law. And that's got teeth. Let me tell you, I've filed a number of lawsuits under that law against municipalities who want to create their own rules on the possession or transfer of firearms, on carrying firearms, other elements of firearm possession and ownership that they cannot regulate. It's right in the statute. And that's got teeth, and I'll explain why when we come back. In the meantime, give us a call. Join the discussion, 317-239-9393, 317-239-9393. This is Guy Relford on The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Another update is just minutes away.
China escalates the trade war, upping the charge on American imports there to 125%. Stock futures are rising the day after another plunge.
Hear the news.
Visas for several people who attend IU have been revoked. Involvement in the pro-Palestinian protests.
As events happen.
There were several structures that had roof damage.
EF1 tornado in Princeton, Indiana.
We'll happen to be there.
Trees uprooted.
93 WIBC Mobile News.
Guy Relford for Tactical Firearms Training. Our most popular class, as I always say, is our Essentials of Indiana Gun Law class, and we've got one of those coming up. It's now less than a month away. It's May 10th. And this is a class that always fills up, so you don't want to wait too long. It's going to be at Indy Arms there on the northeast side of Indy at 2550 East 55th Street. It's $50 for an individual, $95 for couples. We'd love to see you there. This is 4.5 to 5 hours of the most important legal information you need as an Indiana gun owner, and we'd love to see you there. Saturday, May 10th. You can sign up right online. Just go to tactical-firearms.com. Click on upcoming courses at tactical-firearms.com.
Look around. Spring is here. And no matter what you're planning or planting, Hubler's got you covered for 100,000 miles. So spring forward in a Hubler quality pre-owned vehicle, including Chevys, Fords, Toyotas, GMCs, Buicks, Nissans, Acuras, Mazdas, Hondas, and many more. All makes, all models, certified vehicles, luxury vehicles, even the hard-to-find ones. Shop any of Hubler's 13 locations and choose from over 2,000 vehicles. Every Hubler Q-certified vehicle is covered by a 100,000-mile limited powertrain warranty, plus a 128-point vehicle inspection and a free Carfax history report. So spring forward, knowing Hubler's got you covered for 100,000 miles. Visit Hubler.com or any of our 13 locations.
Hubler's got you covered. Cover me!
Warranty on select models less than 9 years old.
Why'd I go to the doctor? My heart would race just taking my son to practice. It didn't feel right. So I got checked out. Turns out I have atrial fibrillation, which increases the risk of stroke about 5 times.
Symptoms like irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain, shortness of breath, fatigue, or lightheadedness can come and go. But if it's AFib, the risk of stroke remains. If you have symptoms, contact a doctor.
I'm so glad I did.
Visit notimetowait.com. Sponsored by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
David was in big trouble with the IRS.
At first, I didn't owe that much, but after this year, it was out of control.
Then David called Get a Tax Lawyer.
Right away, they were like, oh yeah, looks like you're qualified to save.
Get a Tax Lawyer went to work.
Should have called way sooner.
Get a Tax Lawyer has helped thousands like David fight the IRS and get a fresh start.
Call 800-745-3070. That's 800-745-3070.
Welcome to Tire Discounters. Oh, hiya, Phantom.
Mike, I think I saw a fox on my way in.
Oh, that was the Carfax Carfox. He was congratulating us on our Carfax Top-Rated Service Center Award.
I have always rated Tire Discounters at the very top.
Oh, thanks. So does Carfax. And not just for tires, but for all our services, too.
Alignment, brakes, shocks and struts, and more.
Yes, sir.
But, Mike, do you think people believe Carfax over me?
Well, you are the Phantom tire buyer.
Exactly.
When I was younger, I may have did some stupid things, even committed some crimes, but I am not a criminal.
I work for youth advocate programs, yeah. I was Tamani's advocate, helping him stay out of jail, stay in the neighborhood, and get a job.
As a little kid, I experienced trauma and I acted out. Made some mistakes, but I'm not a mistake.
As Jalen's YAP advocate, I'm always here for her.
YAP is a community-based alternative to youth incarceration and neighborhood violence. Youth advocate programs. Learn how at yapinc.org.
My house has a new glow. I love my windows. Universal Windows Direct.
Hey, it's Rob. Right now, buy 2 windows, get 2 free, no limit. The savings don't stop there. Pay no interest until 2030, plus $500 off your home improvement project. Restrictions apply. Call 317-659-7574. Like me, you'll be saying, I love my windows.
I love my windows. They've got that brand new home effect. Universal Windows Direct.
Housing discrimination because of race, color, or national origin is against the law. If you believe you've experienced housing discrimination, contact HUD at hud.gov/fair housing.
When you're high, you feel different. But if you feel different, you drive different. So don't drive high. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Now you've got a gun guy. Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back. I'm Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. Great question that's been asked on the YouTube feed by Hayes. And Hayes, thanks for participating on YouTube. Great question. Can your constitutional rights be violated on people's private property and their rules against firearm possession? And yeah, I'll tell you what, this is something I address in my class. But it's certainly worth addressing here on the show as well, and that is that the Constitution, the Bill of Rights in particular, it's a limitation on what the government can do. And the Bill of Rights, really all 10, refer in some ways to a limitation on powers of the federal government. And And while the Second Amendment doesn't explicitly call that out, that's the effect of the Second Amendment. That is, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It basically means by the government. And they, when they wrote it, they were talking about the federal government, and then through the 14th Amendment, that then was determined to also apply to the states, where the states cannot deprive you of your constitutional freedom as well. But it refers to the government. Hayes is the name of the gentleman on YouTube asking the question. So can a private property owner, like a business, can they have a no firearms policy? Yes. It falls into the category if they can basically have whatever policy they want, subject to some discrimination laws. Like, obviously we can't have a whites only lunch counter and ridiculous things like that thank God we did away with many generations ago in this, I don't know, I guess not that many generations, but generations ago in this country. But the Second Amendment doesn't get that protection. And so they can have whatever policy they want. And it's not unlike, I mean, the example I give in my class is I'll say, I can have a sign up on the door to my office that says no Tom Brady jerseys. And I don't care if it's New England. I don't care if it's Tampa Bay. If you got a Tom Brady jersey, you can't come in my office. And somebody tries to walk in there with a Tom Brady jersey, I can say, nope, didn't see the sign, get your ass out. And if they refuse to leave after being told to leave, then they can be subject to arrest for what we call criminal trespass, which is Class A misdemeanor. And that's exactly the way it works with no firearm signs. Now, in Indiana, unlike several other states, and it's funny, people always talk about pro-gun or pro-Second Amendment states, and everybody wants to talk about Texas. Oh, well, Texas, they have great gun laws. Let me just tell you, Texas has a lot of gun laws, a lot of restrictions on Second Amendment rights that we don't have here in Indiana. I would not trade our gun laws ever for Texas's gun laws. One of the laws they have is they have a law that if a business owner or property owner puts a particular sign, and the sign is determined by statute, but if they put a particular sign, says something like, notice possession of firearms on these premises is prohibited by the owner, and anyone in possession of a firearm who enters these premises shall be subject to arrest and prosecution pursuant to Texas Criminal Code, yada, yada. And if you violate that sign, you ignore that sign and walk in that business, you go to jail. It's crime. I believe it's a felony. Indiana doesn't have that law. So I was carrying a gun today where I went to go have lunch, and there was a big old no firearms allowed sign on the door. And I carry concealed, as I usually do. And so I looked at that sign and went, humph. This is where I choose to eat lunch, and so I ignored it, and I walked on in. I carried concealed. Nobody knew I was carrying a firearm. I had lunch, and I left, came downtown to do radio. And everybody's just fine for the experience. But let's say I wasn't open carrying, or let's say they heard me another time admit on the radio that I carry guns there. And they walk up to me and say, hey, you're now banned from the premises, or because you're carrying a gun, or we believe you're carrying a gun, you have to leave. I have to leave. And if I don't leave, I can go to jail for criminal trespass. And there is no claim, to directly answer Hayes' question, there is no claim that they're violating my Second Amendment rights. And this is not dissimilar to what we saw with Twitter and Facebook. And there's an argument that they were, operating in collusion with the Democratic Party and then the administration under Biden, and so they were really acting as an arm of the government. So there's an argument potentially around this, but generally speaking, when, Twitter kicked Donald Trump off before Elon Musk bought Twitter, or X, as we're now calling it. Tony Katz calls it TwitX, which I think is hilarious. But when President Trump, then former President Trump, actually he may have been acting president when he got thrown off, I'm not sure. But when President Trump got excluded from X, did he have a claim that they were depriving him of his First Amendment rights? The answer was no, because they're a private corporation and they can determine who gets to use their platform and who doesn't. And you don't have a constitutional challenge based on the Bill of Rights, in that case the First Amendment, to say that they're unable to do that because they're a private corporation, they're not the government. So that's a long-winded answer, Hayes, to say yes, a private business can have a policy that excludes firearms, and many do. Now, I will approach that one of two ways. I will simply ignore it because I carry concealed and nobody's going to be the wiser for me entering those premises, or if it's not someplace I necessarily need to go, or I have an interest in going, or I'm meeting someone there, or whatever it might be, I can simply decline to do business with them because they don't respect my Second Amendment rights. But the question that always comes up after this, by the way, and almost invariably when I make this point, somebody will raise their hand or somebody will comment on social media and say, well, does that mean they're responsible for your safety because they're depriving you of the means to defend yourself? They're saying you can't carry your personal sidearm there. So does that mean if somebody comes in there and there's a mass shooting or there's a robbery and you're injured, they're automatically liable for that? Typically, no. For a business owner or property owner to be liable to invitees, is what you're called in that situation, there typically has to be a known and existing threat that they're aware of and they nonetheless expose their invitees to. It can't be hypothetical. It can't be prospective. It has to be a known and identified threat. Generally speaking, and I don't do premises liability, so I'm not the expert in that area, but that's under basic law school principles, that's how that works. So yeah, long-winded answer to your question, Hayes, but there you go, brother. And in the meantime, I'll tell you what, we're almost to the bottom of the hour. Let's take a break. We got more people on hold on the phone lines. As soon as we get through this break, we'll go right back to the phones and continue to take your questions and comments. 317-239-9393. 317-239-9393. This is Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Life moves fast.
Another new directive from Donald Trump.
President Trump will not be deterred to make our federal government more efficient.
So does the news.
We expect those meetings to take place very soon.
Decisions made today.
I'm not a big fan of the Atlantic.
No threats to national security.
Could impact you tomorrow.
Accountability and transparency.
What's next?
You never know what's going to happen. Need to know what happened.
We're already tracking it. Stay in the know while you're on the go on 93 WIBC.
Come on, Indy. Don't use the spring to paint your house year after year. Do what Deanna did. She called Rhino Shield.
I was noticing some cracks and the paint's faded. I was like, okay, I think I should get my house painted. So my neighbor had a Rhino Shield placard in the yard. And after they were finished, I was just, wow. With the warranty and everything, it just seemed silly not to go that route.
The ceramic coating of Rhino Shield is specifically formulated for our climate.
So the Rhino Shield crew came out. Nothing was damaged in the process. I was very happy. They just didn't leave a mess. You couldn't even tell they were there. And the house looked so different. It just looked like a new home.
Backed by a 25-year transferable warranty. And now get the protection of Rhino Shield for 15% off the regular price.
Rhino Shield, I think it increases the value and the curb appeal of your home. Definitely worth it.
Here's Rhino Shield's Shane Smith.
This offer is limited, so call me at 888-RHINO-41. That's 888-RHINO-41.
Don't paint.
Don't vinyl.
Go Rhino.
Never paint your house again. Rhino Shield.
So what's in the bag today? Yesterday's leftovers? Another lunch meat sandwich? Well, go ahead and pull up a rock and settle in for a half hour of I wish I was eating something else. Or you could be eating something else, or someplace else. If you're brown bagging it at the corner of 30th and Shadeland area, drop over to His Place Eatery for 30 minutes of, why didn't I know about this place sooner? Nothing fancy, not a lot of frills. They save that for the quality of the meal. Like ribs that fall off the bone, southern fried chicken, sides that will cause your taste buds to thank you into tomorrow. Put that in your brown bag and eat it. Better yet, bank the bag. Go to His Place Eatery at the corner of 30th and Shadeland, or the newest location off 86th and Ditch Road. Your dirty boots and work clothes are welcome here. His Place, your place for lunch. Go to hisplaceeatery.com to learn more.
I'm Jack Callahan. The White House says talks with Iran today about its nuclear program were constructive. Iran's foreign minister says they'd like to meet again a week from now.
These talks mark the first discussion with Iran since President Trump withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal during his first term. Now, the White House says the ultimate goal here is for Iran never to get their hands on a nuclear weapon.
That's Fox's Dana Marie McNichol. An immigration judge says pro-Palestinian activist Mahmoud Khalil can be removed from the U.S.
Khalil's attorneys, though, are calling the ruling a dangerous precedent, saying he hasn't been charged with a crime.
time, and they're accusing the government of encroaching on his First Amendment rights. Khalil's legal team says he was merely a negotiator for Columbia students who are protesting against the war in Gaza.
Fox's Madeline Rivera. An appeal is likely. America is listening to Fox News.
It's Terry Stacy. How many of you started the year with good intentions of losing weight and getting in shape by spring? Well, if you didn't hit that goal, Exercise Inc. can help. Exercise Inc. has been helping people get stronger, build muscle, lose weight, and transform their health for over 20 years. The program works, and guess what? It only takes 20 minutes a week. Their unique training method was developed in an osteoporosis research study to help prevent bone mineral loss in older women. The women in the study ended up getting very strong in a short amount of time. When the method was applied to normal, healthy adults, both men and women got a lot stronger. Their Simple 9 nutritional program has helped their clients lose over 37,000 pounds since 2013, and they've seen clients lower their blood pressure, improve their blood sugar, and get off prescription meds. Their coaches are professional, their gyms are private. Get started now before summer gets here. Locations in Avon, Brownsburg, Fishers, Greenwood, and Zionsville. Change your life in 20 minutes a week. Go to exerciseinc.com.
With everything going on, it may be hard to imagine one more thing to worry about. But clothes dryers cause thousands of house fires every year, and dirty ductwork in your home is filling the air you breathe with pollutants and allergens. Should you worry? Not if you contact Safe Dryer and Air Duct Solutions, a locally owned, veteran-operated business offering fast, reliable duct and dryer vent cleaning services, making your home safer and your air healthier. WIBC listeners save 10% off any service. One less thing to worry about. Go to safedads.net.
1 in 4 Americans have a disability. I'm one of them. I'm also a working mom who cares deeply about making sure every child with a disability thrives by getting their access needs met. We've got a trusted ally by our side. Easter Seals provides children and families the foundation for lifelong success through early learning programs, skills training, and prep for college and career. That's my Easter Seals. Make it yours. Join us at easterseals.com.
Second to none on the Second Amendment. This is The Gun Guy with Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back. I'm Guy Relford on The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. We had an interesting question on the chat from Peyton, and Peyton asked, this goes back to Hayes' question a little while ago, if a state passes constitutional carry, does that override a company's, and I'm sure he or she means property owners, no-gun policy? No, constitutional carry only has to do with doing away with the state's requirement to have a license to carry a handgun. So again, that's a situation between you and the state. Before 2022, July 1st of 2022 in Indiana, you had to have a license in order to carry a handgun in public. Most places in public. And when we passed constitutional carry, it did away with that, so the state can no longer require you to do that. But constitutional carry doesn't have any effect on where guns can be carried. It doesn't have any effect on a property owner's right to establish whatever policies they want. And listen, as much as I'm a 2A guy, I don't have a major problem with someone who owns a business or owns property being able to establish their own policies for property that they own. And I don't really like the idea of the government stepping in and being big brother telling them how to run their business. I mean, that's not small government, laissez-faire, hands-off approach to laws and regulations that I've looked at for a long time and that I've held for a long time. And so, for instance, when we were fighting for church carry is another law that we had passed in 2019. Same time we dramatically improved the red flag law. Same time we got a free lifetime license. And what we also got done is we got church carry. And because there's never been a law in Indiana that says that it's illegal to carry a gun in a church. But there's a law that says that you can't have a gun on school property. And school property is defined as including any other building or or any other property co-owned with a school. So how many Catholic churches have a parochial school on the same property? And by the way, school is K through 12 for purposes of no guns on school property, is K through 12 and licensed daycare. So how many churches have a school on the property? How many have a licensed daycare? Now, I've been educated on that point over the years, which is churches evidently aren't necessarily state licensed for the daycare they have. There's a separate process for churches. But if they have a state licensed daycare on the same property, or they have a school anywhere on the same property, even though there's nobody in the school, there's no kids going to school. Let's say it's Saturday or Sunday for the worship services at the church. The school is empty. The church is still school property for purposes of the law that says you can't have a gun on school property. So there can be a church across the street that has no school on the property or in the same building and totally legal to carry a gun there. And before 2019, it was a felony if I carry my gun to church to protect my family and myself and my fellow worshipers. And listen, I grew up in the church. My dad retired well into his 80s as a Methodist pastor. And my dad always carried. But this is something that was near and dear to me. And so what we had passed in 2019 is what we call church carry, which is if you're attending a worship service or a religious ceremony in a house of worship on school property, you're legal to possess your gun there as long as it's otherwise legal for you to possess that gun. And also, if you're an employee or a volunteer of that house of worship performing your responsibilities, it's also legal for you to carry there. We passed that in 2019. And by the way, that was sort of a legacy of Senator Jack Sandlin. We lost Senator Sandlin here last year. And he was the one who fought for that bill, and he introduced the original bill. I remember it was his Senate Bill 33, and we couldn't get it done the first couple of years. And we finally got it done in 2019. And then we lost Senator Sandlin not long after that. But I was so excited to get that done, partly for him, because he was just a great gentleman and a great supporter of the Second Amendment. But my point is that in the process of fighting for that bill in the legislature, and we were having committee hearings, and we had several people come in from different congregations. And it was a lady that represented a very large synagogue in Indianapolis. And she said, listen, the leadership of the synagogue we've met, we've prayed on this, we've talked to the congregation, and we don't want guns in our church. And if you pass this, we'll have to have guns in our church. And we don't want guns in our synagogue, rather. And we all said, no. The response was, you can have whatever policy you want. And if you don't want guns in your synagogue, we respect that absolutely. If you don't want guns in your church or your mosque or your temple or your synagogue, you ought to be able to establish that policy. All we're doing is we're taking away the felony that comes along with possessing a gun in a house of worship that happens to have a school on the same property somewhere. That crime goes away. But if you don't want a gun in your synagogue or your church or your temple or your mosque or whatever the house of worship happens to be, you can have a no-gun policy. And it's just like a property owner, to come back to that issue, that has a no-gun policy. They can enforce that through the trespass statute. Say you can't bring a gun to this house of worship, and if you do, we can kick you out. If you refuse to leave, we can have you arrested for trespass. And we wrote right into the bill that while we're taking away the crime, this has no effect on any owner or property owner relative to a house of worship on having a no-gun policy if they want to have a no-gun policy. And that's something we all felt strongly about because we don't want to dictate to anyone, property owner, certainly a church or other house of worship, what policies they need to have. And so that's how I look at that issue. It's your property, your business. You ought to be able to run it like you want. Now, as a gun owner, I can choose not to spend money there. You're a church, you have a no-gun policy, I'll find a different church. And that's exactly what we've done. And I love our church now, and we don't have that issue. Let's go to the phone lines. We had several people holding. In fact, I saw somebody just drop off. Man, I was coming right to you. I'm disappointed you dropped off. If you're still available, give us a call back. But Buzz has called. Buzz, welcome back to the Gun Guy Show.
Hey, tell Mom and Dad happy birthday.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Mom's was, or Dad's was on the 9th, and Mom's the 18th. So 95 and 96. How about that?
That's fantastic. Okay, I was looking at a holster. It's made by DeSantis. It says it has a gun hide retention with an audible click. Now, is that kind of the same as how the Blackhawk clips around your trigger guard? Do you know?
Probably not. And Buzz, I don't know that particular holster by DeSantis. DeSantis has a great reputation of making excellent holsters. But typically when they say an audible click, that's how most of my holsters work. And they can have a pressure point that fits around the trigger guard. Some are specific to weapon lights. In fact, there are holsters out there that are great retention holsters that they'll fit a number of different guns because they actually form fit to your light, and the retention point is the light that you may have attached to your gun. And most of the holsters I have is that when the gun is fully seated into the holster, you get a click. And typically that's sliding past that pressure point that fits around the trigger guard that keeps that in the holster. And a really good test, in fact, this is consistent with IDPA, the International Defensive Pistol Association, is take your unloaded gun, triple check to make sure it's unloaded, have your gun in the holster, unloaded, even though the weight's going to be a little different than loaded, and turn it upside down like over a bed or a pillow where you're not going to damage your gun, and shake it up and down a little bit and see if that gun stays in the holster. If it doesn't, especially as an empty gun, that's not a good enough holster. Now, a lot of holsters have adjustable retention, so there may be a retention screw. You can tighten it up a little bit. But like the holster I'm wearing today is from my friends at rockinguns.com, and love this group of people, and they've made some great things for me over the years. They custom make holsters depending on your gun and light and optic combination, and there's definitely a nice, satisfying click that I get when I holster that gun, and I like that because that tells me it's fully seated. That tells me I don't need to worry about it going anywhere other than sticking right there in that holster, and that is something that is satisfying to any gun owner who cares about weapon retention, which is by definition something you need to be concerned about as a gun owner. I've had many cases over the years that arise from people not keeping control of their firearms, and that turns into a bad situation one way or another. So that's a good quality to have. But I think that's probably what they're talking about, Buzz, is just that click. It doesn't mean there's a secondary retention device like the button on a Serpa Blackhawk that you have to push in as a secondary retention device to release it. You can still just tug it out of the holster, but I'd have to look up that holster to tell you specifically. We're right at the 3/4 hour. We've still got Brad on the phone, and we still have time to take another call or two. So we just had a gentleman drop off. We'd love to have you call back. Give us a call, 317-239-9393. That's 317-239-9393. We'll be back in just a minute to wrap up this edition of the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Another update is just minutes away.
China escalates the trade war, upping the charge on American imports there to 125%. Stock futures are rising the day after another plunge.
Hear the news.
Visas for several people who attend IU have been revoked. Involvement in the pro-Palestinian protests.
As events happen.
There were several structures that had roof damage.
EF1 tornado in Princeton, Indiana.
We'll happen to be there.
Trees uprooted.
93 WIBC Mobile News.
Guy Relford for the law offices of Guy Relford. One of the things that we do in the law office that you'll often hear me talk about is do expungements and other restorations of rights. If something's happened in your criminal history where you've lost your gun rights, often, not always, it depends on the conviction, and certainly it needs to have happened in Indiana, but a lot of times we can go back, depending on what that conviction is for, get that expunged off your record and or restore your firearm rights as well. We've done that for folks that have lost their rights for a long, long time, and we've gotten them back, and it's always something I love to do, and it's satisfying for everybody involved. Even for convictions for crimes of domestic violence, there is a restoration process there. It's discretionary. Judge doesn't have to grant it, but we know exactly how to do that as well, and would love to help out anyone who may be eligible for that if it's been at least 5 years since your conviction. For a felony, it needs to be 8 years since your date of conviction, but a lot of felonies can be expunged and rights can be restored. So we'd love to talk to you about that. If that applies to you, a family member, or a loved one, contact us through relfordlaw.com, through the website. That's relfordlaw.com.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's starting with the woots. Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Look around. Spring is here. And no matter what you're planning or planting, Hubler's got you covered for 100,000 miles. So spring forward in a Hubler quality pre-owned vehicle, including Chevys, Fords, Toyotas, GMCs, Buicks, Nissans, Acuras, Mazdas, Hondas, and many more. All makes, all models, certified vehicles, luxury vehicles, even the hard-to-find ones. Shop any of Hubler's 13 locations and choose from over 2,000 vehicles. Every Hubler Q-certified vehicle is covered by a 100,000-mile limited powertrain warranty, plus a 128-point vehicle inspection and a free Carfax history report. So spring forward, knowing Hubler's got you covered for 100,000 miles. Visit Hubler.com or any of our 13 locations.
Hubler's got you covered. Cover me!
Warranty on select models less than 9 years old.
It's April, and the changing weather brings an increased risk of rain. With those showers comes the potential for water to find its way into your basement, leading to wet floors, condensation, musty smells, or even mold and rot. If you're seeing any of these signs, now is the time to act before it becomes a bigger issue. Indiana Foundation Service specializes in providing reliable basement waterproofing solutions to keep your home dry throughout the spring and beyond. They'll work closely with you to create a customized plan tailored to your basement's needs. From sealing cracks to improving drainage or installing sump pumps, Indiana Foundation Service has the right solution to protect your home from water damage. Don't wait for the next rainstorm to discover you have a problem. Visit IndianaFoundation.com today for a free no-pressure inspection and quote. Indiana Foundation Service. Trusted local experts with the knowledge and experience to solve your basement waterproofing needs.
Indiana Foundation Service. Reliability from the ground up.
Men over 40, struggling with low energy, not feeling like yourself, Low T Center's testosterone replacement therapy is the solution. Get started today. Visit one of their conveniently located clinics, meet a medical provider, and get back to feeling your best.
This month only, the consultation is free. Treatment is tailor-made just for you, and it's covered by most health insurance. Get treated at a Low T Center near you or even in the comfort of your home. Book your appointment now at lowtcenter.com. lowtcenter.com.
Recovery is a journey, and no one walks it alone. The Supporting Sobriety podcast helps friends and families understand addiction, offer support, and care for themselves along the way. Hosted by Matt Baer and Ryan Hedrick. Find it wherever you get your podcasts. The show about gun rights, gun safety, and responsible gun ownership. This is The Gun Guy with Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back for our last segment here of tonight's Gun Guy Show. Let's go right back to the phone lines Brad has been holding for a while. Brad, thanks so much for your patience.
Thank you. I love your show.
Thank you.
My son went, he's 26 now, or will be 26, and he went to Covenant Christian High School, and they thought he might have learning disabilities. So he's only been to a psychologist one time in his whole life, and he was diagnosed with autism. He's high functioning. He could drive if he wanted to. Does that cause him not to be able to have a gun?
No, it should not at all, Brad. And thanks so much for calling. And I'm really glad that your son not only is high functioning. I'm glad he has an interest in firearms, potentially defending himself and his family. I think that's awesome. Typically. The federal government has bounced around on this, and so it's a little difficult to nail it down and to give a real definitive answer. But let me tell you how the law in this area works. Is the federal statute says you cannot possess a firearm, and this is also an exclusion under Indiana's constitutional carry law in terms of carrying a handgun. But federal law says you cannot possess a firearm if you've been adjudicated. That typically is by a court. Or some official tribunal. The Biden administration, and before them, the Obama administration had tried to say that it applied to the Social Security Administration, that would say someone has a disability and needs a fiduciary to handle their finances. And they all said the same about the Veterans Administration, that they weren't capable of handling their own firearms because they pointed at a fiduciary and therefore were stripping them of their Second Amendment rights. But typically it means there's been an adjudication. That means by a judge or some other official tribunal that a person, and the language is deeply offensive. I don't easily get offended, but the language of the federal statute, it's been around since 1968, is that if they've been adjudicated to be mentally defective, and again, that's pretty offensive language, mentally defective, but typically that means they've been determined to be a danger to themselves or others. And the easiest thing that does apply to is if someone's been committed. And you can be, if someone, your family members or law enforcement, they think you're a danger to yourself or others, they can hold you for a 72-hour evaluation. Based on the results of that evaluation, they can start commitment proceedings where ultimately a judge determines based on expert testimony whether you're a danger to yourself or others. And if you are, then you're committed involuntarily and you're held against your will and for treatment because you're a danger to yourself or others. And obviously none of that remotely applies to the situation with your son. Now let's say if he were, he said he's soon to be 26. If he were to go in and apply for his license to carry handgun from the Indiana State Police, we have constitutional carry now, so he doesn't necessarily have to, but there are huge advantages. And I talk about this often. I talk about it in my class. There are still huge advantages to having a license to carry. And let's say he were to apply for that. One of the questions on the application is, does he have a mental illness and has he been treated for a mental illness? And I think, autism, especially being high functioning, as you mentioned, I think it's totally reasonable to say the answer to that is no. And he certainly hasn't been adjudicated to be himself or others. And even if you were to be overly cautious, and I think this is overly cautious, but if you were to be overly cautious and say, well, yes, he's been diagnosed with autism, if you answered yes to that question, typically then the people at the state police, and they do a good job, unlike federal officials that we saw under Biden and under Obama, the state police do a really nice job on this issue. And what they basically want is they want someone who's seen him or treated him to say, I've seen no indication he's a danger to himself or others. And on that basis, then they'll even issue a license to carry. So again, as you mentioned, Brad, being high functioning, not having any kind of an indication, much less adjudication that he's a danger to himself or others, I don't see a problem. And I'll tell you what, we've got less than a minute left, but we got somebody just calling in right now. If you got a real quick question, I'll try to get you in. This is Guy. What do we got for you? What do you got for us?
Yeah, so coming off that stabbing down in Texas where the kid said, touch me and see what happens, does that negate any realistic opportunity to qualify for self-defense?
Yeah, it certainly may justify some reasonable force. If somebody just says something, and listen, people talk big, people talk tough. People say, touch me and see what happens. Does that mean you can pull your gun and shoot him? No. It wouldn't be reasonable under the circumstances. No, there's no reason for you to believe that was necessary under the circumstances. So certainly not deadly force. And with that wraps up this edition of the Gun Guy Show. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you come back next week. This is Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
Spring selling season is here. Rates are down. Activity is up. Now is the best time in years to sell your home. However, some homes are sitting